everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Girl Gone Crypto. Today, I am really excited to have Bitoku here on the show. We've got Bernie Blume, the founder and CEO of Bitoku Labs. So, Bernie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yes, thanks for having me, Leah.
So I have to say, I love your background or your backdrop, the set. I'm getting very inspired right now. I'm feeling very self-conscious about my backdrop, but we will.
Yeah, your backdrop is also nice, and I love your oversized mic, right? I was already asking you before, what are you compensating, huh?
I know. These are the spicy questions that everyone wants to know.
Right.
So just to kind of kick things off, give us a high-level overview of what Bitoku is, what you guys are building, and then we'll just kind of dive into it all from there.
Yeah. So yeah, let me also give you a shocking answer. Everyone
Okay.
knows AWS, Amazon Web
Right.
Services, right? They have their storage part, S3, EC2. And, my prediction is by 2035, they'll be gone. They'll be,
Wow.
gone. Just because, think about it, the world has a trend towards decentralization, towards autonomy. And you see it everywhere, not only in crypto. You see that trend everywhere. Web3 is coming. And, with all the public discussion and look at the Elon Twitter acquisition and everything, right? Nobody is content just playing by the rules of the big players. It's just as it is. So if we look 2035, AWS will be gone. There will be no centralized data storage anymore. And by centralized, I mean centralized control. That's what it's about, right? It's not about, okay, we store it on different locations to have redundancy. I mean, many people have that, but really have decentralized control in the sense of Satoshi, right? And surprisingly, the blockchain that we have today, it has decentralization in money that came with Bitcoin and Litecoin and Dogecoin, and it has decentralization with code that came with Ethereum and all the other L1s. But there is no real decentralization in storage. We have Filecoin and stuff, but they are not connected with the smart contracts, that they are not built to be a storage layer for smart contracts. And that's just missing in the world. And we thought like, man, we got to build that. And I have been running my other company, Ansel, with a decentralized cloud computing solution. And I've been fighting for, decentralizing the web for a long time. And at some point, we just sat together at a founding meeting in beautiful Monterey, California, on December 28th, 2021. I'll never forget that, when we were there with a small team and got the idea for Bitoku together, right? So yeah, that's what it's all about.
Well, that's a perfect transition into a question that I wanted to really bring up and talk through, because like you mentioned, there are other projects that have attempted decentralized file storage. You mentioned Filecoin is probably the most well-known one in that realm. But what are really the barriers to decentralized file storage? Like, what are the problems we're really trying to solve here, and why is it so difficult to crack? And then I guess kind of a tag onto that would be like, how is what you guys doing different than some of the other projects that have tried to tackle it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that. Before I answer that, let me also say that we're aiming for decentralization, not only on the technical level, but also on the ownership of our network, right? So we deliberately avoid venture capital at all, right?
Interesting.
And that's also because of my experience in the past. So I've been running two companies before that were VC funded, and that those were not the greatest experiences, to tell you the truth. So, and we're looking for basically crowdfunding and for you, the users, owning our network. And that's why our nodes, the licenses to run the nodes in our network, are on sale. It starts on November 5th. So let me just say that, but we will be getting back to that. Your question, why is it so hard? It is a tough problem to get storage blockchain based. And if you look at the pioneers there, like Filecoin, for example, they have a thing called proof of space-time. It sounds like, oh, wow, that's general
Star Trek,
relativity.
no.
It reminds me of Einstein, right? So anyway, what they mean by that is way simpler than that. They just say you prove that you provide certain amount of space, storage space, over a certain amount of time to the network, and you dedicate that. And they try to prove constantly and cryptographically, are you really providing your 1 terabyte drive, dedicating your 1 terabyte drive to the Filecoin network? And that is computationally exceptionally expensive, as you can think, right? Because and with Bitoku, we're going a different approach. We're just saying, you know, as long as you store my data and I can retrieve it anytime, it's fine. I don't really care if you're dedicating your whole drive or something like that. As long as, you know, that the approach that Filecoin has is like, as if Airbnb would say, hey, you're dedicating your whole house to Airbnb all of the time, even if it's not rented out through Airbnb. That would be crazy, right?
Right.
But Filecoin has that approach, and we do the correct approach, right? Only if it's rented out, only if I have a customer that actually wants to store stuff, then we do the proof of replication, and we make sure that you replicate that data on a specific computer, because that is important for, you know, defending against attacks, so-called Sybil attacks, right? I could pay like 5 times to have a 5-time replication of my data because I want to sleep well. But then there could be just one guy masquerading as 5. And then if his computer goes down, my data's gone, right? So we're protecting against that through our proof of replication. And, you know, there's a lot of cryptographic problems to solve there in order to get, you know, data storage performant. And also we are building it from the ground up to interact with smart contracts, right? Because we've been building smart contracts on Solana. We love Solana just because it's the fastest L1 blockchain that we know about. And we've been building smart contracts for years now. And what's missing is just the ability to store data, right? If I write code on a normal server, I can compute, but I can also like open a file, open a database, write some data to it. And you cannot really do that on smart contract chains. You can only do it for small amounts of data. And the reason being is all the validators of Ethereum or Solana or whatever, they would have to store my data, right? So you cannot just store, you know, 27 gigabytes, right? It would be too expensive, right? So that's why we have that concept where anyone can contribute storage on the little storage provider devices, right? And they are connected to our validator nodes that validate the storage transactions and that interact with Solana to give that ability through our SDK, software development kit, so that the developers on the smart contracts can just write code as they can on any other server, right? With the storage layer. And surprisingly, it's not there. Nobody has thought about it, right?
So you'd mentioned, you know, like these kind of network of like small storage devices that's contributing to the, you know, the network. What, like, how do people interact with that? Is it just they can use a phone? Do they have to buy it? Like, well, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so people have tried it with a phone, and we're definitely aiming to do that, but that has its own challenges. But yeah, it can be laptops, it can be an old desktop computer that you have, you know, gaining dust somewhere, and it can be Raspberry Pi devices, because we don't need a lot of compute, right? You can use a Raspberry Pi $35 computer and then connect some SSD drive using USB or stuff, and dedicated to the Bitoku network. And we're going to have millions of storage providers all over the world. And they all, the innovation is, one of the innovations is it's connected to our validator nodes. They are the backbone of the network. And, you know, anyone can be part of it starting on November 5, but you have to be there November 5th in order to get it at the best price. But that's a different story. And you know, they're all connected. Well, got to say it, right?
Yep.
So, and they are all connected to the validator nodes, which are the backbone of the network, and the validator nodes earn their rewards based on validating transactions,
So one
storage
thing,
transactions.
yeah, okay. So one thing you mentioned just a moment ago that I want to touch on more and dive a little deeper into is you mentioned performance. And I think that that's been something that's really plagued a lot of decentralized storage type solutions as well, is It's not as slick, it's not as fast as AWS, it's clunkier. And so how are you guys approaching that piece of things to make sure that Bitoku is actually like usable, like by developers to where they would want to choose that, and that's not a barrier in that sense?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, it's an absolute priority for us, right? And I've been saying that in my other videos and everywhere in all my communications. The goal is to create mass adoption, and mass adoption is only possible with performance, right? And that's why we're building on Solana. That doesn't mean we will be connecting to other smart contract platforms in the future, but right now we're building it on Solana. We really feel it is the most performant L1 chain out there, and it is the one that probably has the highest probability of gaining mass adoption anytime soon. And we will be borrowing the technology that's out there in Solana. First of all, proof of history, right? So if you know a little bit about Solana, proof of history is a key innovation there, and it removes the need to have N-by-N communications among all those validators. And that's what's taking the time, right? In other L1 chains. They all need to agree on a common system clock. So they all talk to each other, and that the time grows with the square of the number of validators that are out there.
Right.
And we want a large number of validators, right? So and then that thing slows down. And Solana has that proof of history where basically it hashes the hashes of the previous hashes and stuff like that. So it's just a chain, a hash chain that weaves in the actual transactions. And we're going to be using that. And the whole Solana code is open source, by the way. It's written in Rust. We're big fans of Rust, and we've written all our Rust smart contracts. So we're going to be building and using large chunks of the Solana source code to have our storage chain built on those technologies, which will speed it up enormously. And then also that concept that I mentioned before, where I gave the Airbnb example, where we're not going into trying to prove constantly, right? Whether you're dedicating your whole drive,
Right.
that takes so much performance, right? Yeah, and then make it easy. One of the drawbacks of Filecoin is like you have to strike a deal beforehand, right? So if I write an app or something, or I want to store data, I have to find someone that stores it for me with the SLAs that I want, and strike a deal with them. And we want something that's mass adoptable. Everyone can just write a new smart contract that has a Web3 version of Craigslist, right? And
Right.
and boom, it's there, right? And you don't want to strike a deal with anyone or so, right? And yeah, that's the new world of all these dApps that are not decentralized only for compute as they are today. They will be decentralized also for storage, right? And you cannot build a Web3 version of Airbnb or something without a storage layer, right? It just doesn't make sense.
You really can't build anything without a storage layer. Everything has storage.
Well,
Right.
there are some. If you think of DeFi, right,
Right.
you don't need much
That's true.
storage in the current DeFi apps, right? Because they don't store much data. They only store your balances of each of your token, and then maybe your trades or stuff like that. But the reason DeFi is relatively dumb today, and sometimes DeFi is called self-driving banks. I love that metaphor, right? It's banks that are not driven by people, driven by software, right? But they are so dumb because they don't have a storage layer. So have you seen a DeFi platform where you can upload your credit report or upload some contracts? No, they are not there because there's no storage layer. Right? That's why DeFi is so dumb today. There will be a whole class of DeFi apps with Bitoku. It's just as it is. Yeah.
So speaking of mass adoption, you were touching on that a second ago. I kind of want to circle back to something you said at the beginning, where you're like, I think AWS won't be here, in 10 years' time kind of thing. I mean, I guess all of us here in the crypto space care a lot about decentralization, and we realize how important it is. It's kind of that You talk about like privacy, you talk about empowering people, not having centralized control. These are all concepts that, we here in the crypto world really understand how deeply important they are. But from like a mass adoption kind of standpoint, do you think that the average consumer really cares about decentralization? And if they don't, like what do you think will happen between now and the next 10 years that'll make them care enough about that maybe AWS would be a little bit out of the picture at that point? It seems like we're still so far away from people really understanding and caring about decentralization.
Yeah, it's a slow process, right? But, it's a steady process, right? When
Mm-hmm.
I came to the US 8 years ago from Germany, right? And Germany is a way more privacy
Mm,
focused country than the US is, right?
yeah.
And then I came to the US and I thought like, oh, it's never going to happen here. Nobody's caring about privacy, decentralization, and all these things, right? And years passed and now I'm seeing it everywhere, right? And in a sense the whole crypto movement is about decentralization, and it
Mm.
keeps growing and growing, right? The prices go up and down as we see, right?
Right.
but, but actually, the adoption is growing like crazy. We participated in the Solana summer camp hackathon just last month or 2 months ago, right? And they had like 18,000 participants, and they had 750 teams that submitted a working dApp on Solana, and that was an all-time high, right, in the middle of crypto winter, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so the trend is there. People will see it more and more, and people will also see what happens when things are too decentralized. And sometimes things happens like breaches and then AWS outages, and how
Right.
we've had that a couple of years ago, some AWS DNS outage, and then
Right.
half of the US was without internet for
So
hours,
crazy.
right? Yeah. So I think this trend is unstoppable, right? And
Mm,
and it's also unstoppable that you know all the world's IT infrastructure, all the systems that we have right now that are built, in a centralized manner, be it Airbnb or Craigslist that I mentioned or anything else, it will all be rebuilt on Web3, right?
mm,
And someone will build it, right? And people will see the advantages, and like the through technology, people are more and more enabled. They don't need the centralized instances as much as they did 100 years ago to guide them through their life, right? They want to be more and more self-contained, especially in this country, obviously.
mm.
And yeah, I just feel it's unstoppable.
So let's talk about what's happening on November 5th. We've got, everything happening with the nodes. And so if you could just kind of like walk us through that, but then also on kind of the flip side, maybe walk us through a little bit of like the Oku token, which I know is kind of coming down the line. But just kind of give us an overview of what's happening on the 5th, but in general, ways that people can kind of engage with and get involved with Bitoku.
Yeah. So yeah, November 5th, our node sale is starting. So it's about um getting on board, um, securing your own right to run a validator node in that future blockchain, which is super exciting. And again, this is our means of securing our funds to actually build that blockchain. And we are deliberately not going the VC route. We want our users to be the owners,
Mm-hmm.
and we have those nodes on sale. And it's a little bit where we're walking in the footsteps here of another project called Gala Games, so
Mm.
really different domain. We're not about gaming, even though it can be used for gaming as well, right? But we're not about gaming. But Gala Games, they offered their nodes about 2 years ago, right? And they started at $2,000, and right now one Gala node is $96,000, right?
Whoa.
So they have that ascending pricing model that we also have, right? So
Mm,
our nodes will start at a ridiculous low amount of $200 on November
mm,
5th. And then every time 100 nodes are sold, the price will go up by $100, right?
mm,
So after 100 nodes are sold, it's going to be 300. And then we sell 100 nodes for 300, and then it goes up to
mm,
400, and so on and so forth. and we had our private sale. So this is the first time the public will have the opportunity to get their hands on these nodes. We had a private sale in July, August, and that was to a very small closed user group, which are basically customers of my previous cloud computing company, right? So nothing about crypto or stuff like that. We had 1,300 nodes on sale there, and the price went up from $100 to $700 in a matter of 12 seconds, right?
Oh, wow.
So there was huge demand there. I'm super happy, and I was anxious, obviously. I thought, oh man, there are so many things that could go
Right.
wrong, and it already was crypto winner in July. And yeah, we sold so many in 12 seconds, and then towards the end we sold all the rest, and it took us like, I think, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks to sell off all the 1,300 nodes that were on offer, and to raise the maximum amount that we could have raised there in the private sale, which was $660,000. And
Nice.
for the middle of crypto winter, we find that quite remarkable, right?
Right.
And people are on our Discord. So if you go to bitoku.io, join our Discord and be part of the discussion. Ask any questions. Ask questions about what dApps will be possible with Bitoku that weren't possible before. And yeah, so that will be available starting November 5th. And then the nodes will emit rewards in the form of Oku tokens. So Oku is our native currency that pays for storage services.
Right.
And so now our storage blockchain is not there yet. So we have a little prototype like MVP. So you can still use it for storage services, or you can already use it for storage services, which are not that exciting, of course, than the storage services that will be there when our blockchain is there, right? But Oku, it's important to understand, it's a pure utility token. It's being used for data storage, and the nodes earn rewards on a daily basis, even while our Bitoku chain is not live yet, right? So the moment you buy one of these nodes, you see it in our smart contract in your node store account, and it'll emit rewards on a daily basis. So you accumulate those Oku tokens. They are not listed yet, right? Which might be a great thing. You're just accumulating. You're not paying for the Oku tokens because they're rewards for having bought the node. And at some point in time next year, they might be listed. Either we might list them, or someone else just might create a permissionless liquidity pool somewhere and make them tradable. We feel it's not in our interest and not in the interest of the node owners to have them listed that quickly, right? Our goal is to have some time to actually build that chain that is super innovative, as we talked about it, and listed at a point in time where we can really show our value, rather than listing it at an early stage where people just say, oh, I bought a node and I want to cash out on my Oku tokens, right? So yeah.
Perfect. Well, Bernie, it's been so much fun to have you on the show and get to really dive into not only what you guys are building over at Bitoku, but also just in general, the arena of decentralized file storage and how important that is and the role that it plays, and really why you guys are working on this and building this. And so if someone's watching this and they want to check out more about you guys, maybe check out everything that's happening on November 5th, where's the next best place for them to go?
Well, the best place obviously is just bitoku.io, BITOKU. .io. There's everything about the launch there. You got to be a little bit early because November 5th is the start date, the launch date. And as I told you, what happened in the private sale, these were really coveted, the nodes at the lower prices. So if you want to get in at that low price, you need to be ready with your wallet, right? So you need to have a Solana wallet by that. Phantom is the way to go. Just go to phantom.app and you have your Solana wallet. But what takes time is getting your wallet funded, right? So you go to some centralized exchange, buy some SOL, because you need a little bit of SOL, the native Solana currency, to pay for the transaction fees. But you also need USDC because you're going to pay for other nodes with USDC. and you need to get that out of your centralized exchange into your Phantom wallet, and that can take time. If you pay the centralized exchange with credit card or direct debit or anything that's convenient and free, then they're going to put a hold on it, right? Which is very understandable, but it just you're losing a
Takes
week or
time,
sometimes
yeah.
10 days or something like that, right? So if you can, and if you're late in the game, make sure you wire them the money. It's going to cost you $25 maybe, depending on your bank, but it's very well worth it, because that way you have the money next day, and you can participate and get those nodes on the cheap.
So basically, just be ready is what you're saying. Don't wait till the morning of if you're interested.
Yeah. I mean, it's just what happened in the private sale, right? It
Right.
was so quick, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Bernie, thank you again so much for really taking the time to sit down and chat with me. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show.
Yeah, Leah, has been a lot of fun, and talk to you soon.